In this edition of Coudrill's Cornish Cream, Mike Dease sits in for regular host Jonathan Coudrill, talking with the acclaimed French-Algerian guitarist Pierre Bensusan, who's been called a musician's musician, an orchestra of one, and a poet of the guitar. Mike Dease finds out how his influences of classical, modern jazz, the traditional music of Europe, North Africa, India and Argentina translate into magical masterpieces of the modern guitar.
You were born during the Algerian War of Independence and you came to Paris in 1962. When did your musical influences begin? Who influenced you and what style?
I think it began from day one, from my early years in Algeria, from my family, from the reunions of the family. But when I grew up, what we were listening on the radio, the Platters, for instance, what my parents were listening to, like classical opera, Django Reinhardt, Stéphane Grappelli, Hot Club of France. My mother was singing a lot of songs in Spanish, in French, in Arabic. My two sisters were already studying the piano, classical music. So I grew up in this kind of environment where music was just a natural element.
You grew up in a very musical household?
Yeah, just naturally it was an element of life.
And after you came to Paris as a child,
as a refugee, right.
When you decided you wanted to pursue music, where did you go? Did you go to a special school? Did you go to a music school, a music college?
My parents had me to take piano when I was 7 years old. I started to play a lot of classical music and read music and everything. I sort of decided I wanted to pursue a musical career. And so from the age of 12 to the age of 16, I went on to school, the normal school, thinking when I would be 16, the day of my 16th birthday, I quit school to become a full-time musician. So that's what I did the very day of my birthday, and I was completely self-taught. I took up the guitar and learned on my own.
And then, very quickly, age 17, you landed a recording contract with Sésame, the French label.
Yeah, right.
How did that occur?
The phone rang and they said, we heard about you from people, and those people said that we should check you out. Is there a show you are doing somewhere where we can come and listen to you? And I was playing in the suburb of Paris, so they came to my show. And then they said, okay, we sign you for 3 records. It was a brand new record label. And in fact, I did three albums with them. It was at the big time of the folk revival in Europe, in France, England. And those 3 records were quite successful, And from those 3 records, I had got a license in America with Rounder Records and started to tour in America as well and all over Europe.
Would it surprise you to know, Pierre, that I spoke to a Parisian journalist friend of mine about 5 years ago now, when I was doing some research about you before I first heard you in America. And she described you as a national treasure of France.
That's very sweet.
What are your favorite pieces of your own music?
It varies, it changes, Sometimes it's one, another time it's another one. I don't really listen a lot to my albums once they're made, I do listen when I'm making them, in the middle of elaborating this music a lot. And then I record it, then I listen for a while, and then I want to forget about it and rediscover the tunes when I'm playing them on stage.
When you compose your music, do you have to be in a certain frame of mind? Do you get inspired by your surroundings? Do you get inspired by listening to other things? Or do you say, this is my time at home in between touring, now I've got to write some new work?
A bit of everything that you just mentioned. I'm inspired by reading, by meeting people, by, of course, listening to other musics, big time. But I also, sometimes I'm not inspired. And I'm still taking my guitar and I want to have a digital contact with the music. And I think that's also a way to get the inspiration come to you. But the simple fact to play, to make the sound happen to the ears is already a way to make the music real under the fingers. That's also a very important factor, because obviously I will have to make it happen on my instrument. So a lot of this process is in fact knowing the fretboard, being confident with my instrument so that I can forget the instrument, so that I can forget the technique, and I can really get into improvisations. And so I do a lot of improv when I'm home. That's one of the ways I choose to practice my instrument, to improvise around ideas that I have. You know, those ideas usually are with me for quite a while. And then I develop them on the instrument. And I don't necessarily write the ideas right away. I try first to have a sort of elaborated content on the instrument, and then eventually I will write it down.
How many songs have you written over the years, do you know?
At least 100, because I did 10 records, and there's a lot that I have also not recorded yet, and I'm still working on it, so maybe a couple hundreds.
You spend a great part of the year, certainly about half the year, touring. Tell me something about the countries you travel in regularly with your performances.
Regularly? Okay, beside France.
Beside France, where I know you have huge audiences.
My biggest audience is in North America, because I've been playing there for almost 30 years now. And in Europe, of course, England, Ireland will be two of the most important countries for me where I tour regularly, but also Italy, Belgium, Switzerland, Germany. I went 5 times to Japan. I went once to South Korea. I try to entertain those countries regularly, so to have a regular contact with the audience there. And I teach masterclass residential guitar seminars out of my house near Paris twice a year, in the spring and in the summertime. And I also address some seminars, even some clinics like 3 hours long, or some semi-residential seminar like 2 or 3 days long, in America, on the West Coast, on the East Coast, sometimes in England, once in Italy, you know. So I do a bit of regular instructional approach as well. It's a big part of what I do.
When did you meet Dorothea, your wife?
When I was 15. We met at the American Center in Paris.
What were you doing there?
Well, there was a folk club every Wednesday. This is where we met. I was still at school, and she was, you know, singing, beautiful voice, playing guitar a lot. She was doing a lot of Johnny Mitchell, John Baez, you know, and she was going out with her boyfriend of that time. They had a duet, and so I did my first record, and they both became very supportive of my work, and so we met through the music, and in '81 we dated, and we became a couple.
I know she's very supportive behind your whole business enterprise, and she holds the fort while you're traveling.
Oh no, she's amazing, and she's also addressing one course during those seminars that we do at home. The students don't know that, but when they come, they are surprised. They are going to spend an entire day with her, and she's addressing posture, breathing, musicality, interpretation, rhythm. She's a choreographer. Her background is modern dance, choreography, flamenco, and now she's a physical therapist. So she's in fact addressing a very complementary aspect of what I do.
And you have a son?
Yeah, he's 14 and a half. He's into rap. His name is Théophile. He played the drums, he played the keyboards when he was 4 years old. He said, "Daddy, it's too good, I don't want to play the guitar," which I thought was very wise of him. You know, he had already identified a possible future conflict, you know, and he took from both of us, you know, the dancing, the music, the singing. So we'll see.
You live in a very nice part of France, I know, in Château-Thierry. That's in the Champagne country.
Yes, in a village, very rural. 1 hour east of Paris only, but when you are there, Paris seems very, very far away. We bought a farm, and we have renovated the farm. We needed space for our seminars, my wife for dancing. I wanted to have my recording studio at home, so that dream became reality.
Pierre Bensusan, world-class musician, inspiration to young musicians. It's been a pleasure. Merci beaucoup.
Merci, thank you.
This edition of Coudrill's Cornish Cream was presented by Mike Dees. Studio direction was by Julian Rowe. It was recorded at the Acorn Theatre, Penzance. The Pierre Bensusan interview was a joint Sound Mind Dadgad music production for Cornwall World Radio.